All right, now you get your chance at Dr. Zubrin, Dr. Cafaro. We'll ask for questions, not statements, if you don't mind. Keep it succinct, and then we're going to ask each presenter to reply at the length of about a minute so that we can get around to a lot of topics. Would you stand and identify yourself? Start with Carl, please.
Good evening, Carl Hoops. I was very interested in the analysis of population growth. It's my understanding that a society that's not growing is dying. That everyone is getting poorer, that the elderly will not be taken care of, that the gross national product will decline, that average wealth goes down if you don't have at least a positive growth in population. Can you speak to that, please?
Are you addressing me or?
I think that comes more to Cafaro. Why don't you start, Phil, and then Robert can answer.
We have a lot of good examples in recent years of countries that had either a very slowly growing or a relatively stable population and still had a certain amount of economic growth. So for instance, Germany, Italy hasn't grown that much in recent years, and yet certainly Germany has one of the strongest economies in Europe. Several of the Nordic countries as well have grown quite slowly. So I think as an empirical matter, I think you can have growth, economic growth, without population growth.
Let me just say this. Europe right now is suffering from a population implosion. And it's going to lead to the bankruptcy of the continent, and we're already seeing this. And it's obvious why. They have all these social security systems, and they're all based on people who are working, paying to supply income to those who are not working, in particular those who've retired. Now, you know, and we're beginning to face this here too, but it's much more extreme there, precisely because of the low rate of population growth. When, you know, we first passed Social Security in this country, I don't know the number, but there were maybe 50 workers for every person that would be on Social Security. And now it's like 6 or something. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but that's the trend. And in Europe, it's much worse than that. And this is completely unsustainable. It's an impossible situation. And, you know, of course, in the old days, one reason why people had children, in addition to wanting to have children, because children are a great joy in life, is that they would support you when you get older. Now, it's still the case that children support people when they get older, okay? But we've socialized it. Now people depend on other people's children to support them when they get older. And, you know, someone once said the problem with socialism is when you run out of other people's money to spend. Well, another problem is when you run out of other people's children to support you.
Dr. Cafaro, would you comment on whether our social insurance systems and the welfare state can in fact be sustained if you have that diminishing ratio of the payers to the takers?
Well, I mean, if you push the ratio hard enough, yeah, that does become unsustainable. But I think that's been very overplayed. I mean, we've had dozens and dozens of stories in the last couple of years. It's almost as if people want desperately to justify continued population growth.
Well, you cite German economic growth with a relatively low population growth. Do you reject his characterization that Europe as a whole, as its population would decline, is facing fiscal disaster? Yeah,
I would. I mean, look, Italy today has about a 1.2 total fertility rate. So every woman has about 1.2 children. Now, if you keep birth rates that low and play that out for 200 years, the country disappears. So yeah, that is not sustainable. On the other hand, our fertility rate in the US is about 2.05 is the last number I saw. Now that is sustainable far into the future. It wouldn't grow our population over time, but it would just replace the current population. And as we become more technologically sophisticated, as we have more economic growth, I'm pretty sure that that would be sustainable.
And for the record, excuse me, none of your slides of different scenarios of population growth that I could see projected a continuing downtrend in the population of the United States or the globe. And Mr. Zubrin attributed to you views that are perhaps from other contributors to your edited volume there, Life on the Brink. What is your own position? Do you want the United States population to decline?
Long term, I would like to see that over centuries.
What's optimum in the United States of America?
I think that's very hard to say. I think that's very hard to say, but
But if you put that graph on a down slope, at some point, can't we expect that you would tell us when you would want the down slope to go level?
I don't know enough to answer that. Here's what I would say. I think it's very important for us to have enough children and workers to support ourselves and our retirees. That's an important consideration. I think it's important that we find a way to live sustainably on this landscape. And finally, I think it's important that we live generously. We leave enough habitat and other resources for other species. So we have to make all that work. And I'm not sure exactly what the optimal population is for that.
One more comment from you, Dr. Zubrin, or should we go back to the floor?
Well, he says repeatedly here, future human well-being depends on slowing economic growth, not accelerating it. He quotes in here favorably a man named Pimentel, who advocates that the population of the United States be reduced to 40 to 100 million people. And then you have other authors in this book, which you edited.
Okay, let's take it back to the floor. Are you willing to take a question from the young lady in white in the front here? This young lady here?
She looks suspiciously like my...
There she is.
Identify yourself, please, miss, and we'll hear your question.
I'm Rachel Zubrin. Well,
Stand up so people can hear you and see you, Rachel. Thank you.
hi. So I have a question for you. I'm sure you're aware that the Earth cycles around the sun, so that every 100,000 years the Earth goes into an ice age, a glaciation, correct? Which would probably occur before the effects of global warming could cause serious damage. So what I'm asking you is, how is your strategy of limiting population growth going to deal with that climate change?
Well, I think what we're dealing with now, I mean, it's very hard to get human beings to look 20 years out, or 50 years out, or 100 years out. And what the scientists are telling us is that over the next couple hundred years, if we continue on the path we're taking, we're on track to really massively change the climate and ratchet up temperatures. So I think that's what our focus has to be. Now, there are these further questions about longer-term cycles. My understanding, and I'm not a climate scientist, but my understanding is those cannot be based on the Earth's path around the sun. There's speculation about that, but it's all very uncertain.
College biology.
No, I don't think so. But in any case, what the scientists are telling us on the IPCC is the focus we should have now is on global warming.
You want to comment on long-term climate cycles, Dr. Zubrin?
Well, it's just this, that, Carl Sagan used to say that all species either become spacefaring or extinct. And the broader point there is, unless a species establishes greater power over nature, there are things that can happen, ice ages, asteroidal impacts, etc., that we will not have the capability of averting. So in order not to be helpless in the face of these massive catastrophes, we have to have a species with much greater capabilities, technological, industrial, material capabilities. That is the only way to avoid real natural disasters.
And again, I'm going to take the prerogative of the moderator to try to complete the record here and balance things. Dr. Cafaro, it was attributed to you earlier a critique of anthropocentric or human supremacist ethics. Is that in fact a concern that you have, that we ought not have such ethics? Comment on that.
Yeah, environmental philosophers use the word anthropocentrism in a number of different ways, but the main way is the following. Anthropocentrism is the view that only human beings have primary value or intrinsic value. So if we define anthropocentrism as the view that human beings have intrinsic value and everything else out there just has value as a resource for us, then yes, I'm very critical of that. That's not to say that I don't think that human beings have a tremendous amount of value. It's not to say that I don't think if we have to sacrifice a goat to save a human being, we shouldn't sacrifice the goat. What it's saying is other things matter too, and we should take that into account.
This is far afield, but yes or no, do animal rights then fit into your scheme of an ideal ethics?
Yeah, they would.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Dr. Turian here. Introduce yourself, sir.